But today we're starting the very first ever Digital All-Stars stream sponsored by Microsoft Stores. Now, as many of you know, our Microsoft Stores retail locations are all temporarily closed now. But the team is still committed to providing quality technical instruction online. So, Microsoft Stores is proud to be partnering with the All-Star athletes who are passionate about technology and connecting with their communities to offer this Digital All-Stars program. So for our first ever show, I'm super excited to be hosting Brandon McManus from the Denver Broncos.
Okay, I think they said it works now.
Okay, good.
Do you mind asking the question again? Sorry.
Yeah, not at all. I was just saying we're going to be coding a game together in this video, and wanted to know what you think about like why it's important for kids to learn about, just technology and coding and kind of your personal experience with technology.
Yeah, I think it's very important. Obviously, our younger generation, obviously, as we continue to us older generation learn more and more about technology. It's the younger generation, like you kids here, that will help propel it to a whole nother level. And obviously, it's always important to understand kind of the front and back end of how things work. And that's really what technology is what turns the TV on, what makes channels happen, what makes websites go live, what makes videos work. And especially in our case here, coding games is, what is the kind of the JavaScript, obviously, is what we'll be using a little bit to code these games. What is the kind of, as we all know about our health and our bodies, is we have health class and we see what goes inside our bodies, which makes us us. It's the same thing with technology and coding, is what makes these things work, what makes them work so well. And I think that's important for us to all continue to learn and understand.
Yep, that's totally right. Yeah. And so for this activity, we're going to be using something called MakeCode Arcade, which is like a retro 1980s style arcade video game development environment. So are you familiar with arcade games, and have you played any?
Oh yeah, of course. One of my favorite ones is both Super Mario Brothers and a Donkey Kong. Obviously, Pac-Man is a legendary game over all the years, but I was a little more of a Donkey Kong and Mario Brothers guy. So
Nice. Yeah, my favorite was Mrs. Pac-Man. So for our listeners listening here, if you guys want to type in your favorite arcade games that you've ever played into the chat window, let us know what your arcade games are. So, and for those of you kind of following along with us and who want to do this coding activity with us at home, what I would suggest is you open up a separate browser window and have that kind of window separated out from the video, from the Mixer video, and then go to arcade.makecode.com. I'm just going to paste it into the chat window here. Oh, links are not allowed. But if you go to arcade.makecode.com, if everyone can see that, open up a browser window. You should get to a page. Yes, thank you. Arcade.makecode.com. You should get to a page that looks like this. And this is kind of the home page of Arcade. And you can see there's a bunch of tutorials and videos and game examples here to choose from. So Brandon, what kind of game do you want to code today?
yeah, I think something fun that kind of involves a lot of the movements of the game and coding would be a maze game. So I think that would be probably a cool one for everybody to see and check out.
Let's do it. Okay, so if everyone's on this page, if you could go ahead and click New Project, this orange square here, plus sign, to create a new project. Now, what should we name our game? Brandon's?
I'm a big, it's kind of like a Nickelodeon show, is Legends of the Temple. So what was it called again, if you remember? Legends of Temple, I think it was called. So let's call this the Temple of whatever your name is. So whatever your name is out there.
Temple of whatever your name is. So in this case, let's do Brandon.
Yep.
But fill in your name here. So temple of whatever your name is. And then go ahead and click create. All right.
Legend of the Hidden Temple. Thank you.
What was it? Oh, Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Thank you for that.
Nice, nice. Okay, so so now we're here in the MakeCode arcade editor, and on the left side of this page, you'll see something that looks kind of like this little game console. This is where we're going to play our game, and it also is going to show us what our game looks like as we're coding it. In the middle here is a toolbox of different code blocks that we can use in our game. And then on the right here is our workspace. And this is essentially where we're going to be writing our code. And you can see there's already one block on our workspace here. It's called onStart. What do you think this does?
Pretty much anything that we put inside the non-start block will run as soon as we start the program. Whether it's a name flash, a screen flash to anything, or any type of text you want, whatever you put in that onStart will once the program starts.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the first things we want to do as soon as our program starts is kind of just lay out our maze. And so to do that, click on the Scene Toolbox drawer and then scroll down into this Tiles category here where it says Tiles. And then you're going to want to grab this first block that's called Set Tile Map. So grab this and drop it into our onStart here. And then you're going to click on this little gray square here to open up our tile map editor. And so in this space, this checkered canvas here represents the canvas for our maze. And on the left, you can see there's some bunch of sort of drawing tools and then a palette of different types of tiles that we can use, or we can create our own tiles. Now, tiles are just what you think they are. They're like bathroom tiles that you can essentially lay out in a sequence to be sort of the background of your game. So let's pick a tile to use as the wall of our maze. So you can see we've got some tiles here in the forest category. We've got some aquatic themed tiles. There's some dungeon tiles here.
Since the name of it's the Temple of whatever your names are, Temple of Jacqueline, Temple of Brandon, I think we should use one of the dungeon tiles.
I think you're right. I think we should use a dungeon tile. Any preferences on what type of dungeon tile we should use for the walls of our maze?
No, I think whatever you think looks good.
Okay. Does any one of our viewers have a preference? If you do, type it in the chat window. Otherwise, I'm just going to pick this tile here to represent the wall of our maze. You can pick whatever tile you want if you're doing this at home for your game. And then once you've picked a tile, just click on it. Then select this fill tool. Oh, that's the one you're using too. Okay, yeah. Select this fill tool, which looks like a bucket of paint here. If you click on it and then click inside your canvas, it will fill your entire space with that tile, which is what we want. All right, so now we've kind of got the walls all filled in. Now let's make a pathway for our maze. Let's select a tile that can be used as sort of the path that our player will follow to get through the maze. So I'm going to stick with this dungeon category here.
I like the kind of cracked.
Maybe you like the cracked one? Okay, where's the cracked one? Like this one maybe?
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
This is a good one? Okay. Yeah, so select another tile that will be kind of used as a pathway for your maze. And this time, click on this pencil paint tool here instead of the fill tool. And this will just allow us to sort of paint where we want our maze to go. So this is the fun part. So now you need to sort of draw out what the maze will look like. Keeping in mind that you want a start and an end point in your maze. So for example, I'm going to just go ahead and draw kind of like up and down maze that goes like this, maybe around here, and then ends here. So something like that.
And everyone out there, feel free to, you know, do whatever design you would like. Just like Jacqueline said, make sure there's a start and end spot.
That's right. You want an opening in the beginning and you want an opening in the end, but it can go wherever you want, and you can kind of create, you know, dead end passageways here, like I'm doing, just to kind of, you know, lead people astray. Oops. If you make any mistakes, you'll notice there's an undo and redo tool here at the bottom. I'm just going to undo that part and just redo whatever other parts you want. So yeah, so feel free to design a little pathway through your maze using that different tile that you picked. Now, once we're done with this, we need a way to tell the computer what the walls are. So right now we just have kind of a design of tiles, but the computer doesn't know which is walls and which isn't. And so to do that, there's this little wall tool here. So I'm going to click on it. You'll notice it turns red. This is our little wall overlay tool. So go ahead and click on this little guy, this red wall tool. And then you're going to paint over kind of the walls where your player can't travel. So these walls are actually invisible when you're actually playing the game, but it just lets your player know that they can't overlap on any of these sort of wall tiles. So use that wall tool to go ahead and paint over any of your walls just around your path. It doesn't need to be all of your wall tiles, but just make sure your player can't go off of the path that you've set for them in your maze. If anyone has any questions or kind of is stuck, go ahead and ask your question in the chat window and we'll get back to you. So this is what our maze looks like so far. So I've got one tile that's kind of being the path for our maze here. And then we've got another tile that's the wall with the wall overlay around the path. Does that make sense? Okay, now the last thing we want to do before we exit our tile map editor is set the start and the end tiles for our maze. So let's go ahead and pick some good starting tiles. I don't know, Brandon, do you have any suggestions what tiles you want to use?
Is there anything else in the dungeon there? It's maybe like the blue.
This guy?
Yeah, it looks like kind of like a
portal.
Like we got dropped into the temple.
Nice, I love it. This is our portal, yeah. So go ahead and pick a tile to be your start tile and put it at the beginning of your maze, just like that. Then you want to pick a tile to be the end of our maze. It could be a chest. This looks like a chest. This looks like a magic ball of some sort.
I'd say the chest is cool.
The chest. Okay, let's get the chest and set this to be the end of our maze here. So we've got a starting point and we have an ending point for our maze. All right. And then once you're done with that, go ahead and click this green done button to set our tile map. And we can see part of our maze right here in the console here. But what are we missing? We don't have a player character yet, yeah? So that's what we're gonna do next. So
what is the website again? Some people are asking what program is this?
Oh, arcade.makecode.com. Yeah. So just open up a browser to arcade.makecode.com. And you can kind of follow along with us as we create our maze game. Okay, so let's create a player character. So I'm going to go to my Sprites toolbox drawer, and you'll see this very first block here is called Set My Sprite. Grab this very first block and drag and drop it into our OnStart block. So, so sprites are essentially just any object in a game that has like properties and behaviors. So a sprite could be like a character in the game, or it could be like an obstacle in your game, or like some sort of collectible. So that's what we're using for our players is Sprite.
So obviously in Miss Pac-Man, your favorite game, Jacqueline.
That's right.
Miss Pac-Man's a sprite. The little yellow balls that they eat is a sprite, and the ghosts are sprites, as well as the cherries and everything else that you try to capture.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah. So exactly, a sprite is something that is interactive, that you can interact with in the game. Unlike a tile, which is really kind of just a background kind of image. So, yep. All right, so now in this Set My Sprite block, what I want you to do is click on this gray box here. And when you click on it, it will open up our Sprite editor. So this is where you can kind of design your own sprites if you want. My pixel art abilities are terrible, as you can see. So I think we're going to go to the gallery. So if you look at the top, there's sort of a gallery here of existing sprites. So let's go ahead and pick a player character sprite. Brandon, any suggestions?
Yeah, I'm just trying to keep with the theme, obviously, with if there's any type of knight or character.
We have our little hero character here.
A little hero, or maybe the princess in the temple there.
The princess. I'm a big fan of the princess. There's also like a little, there's like a skeleton. I think that might be more of an enemy sprite though. There's a little kitty cat or like a puppy, or there's football players. So it's, yeah, what do you think?
Let's go with, let's do the princess. I think that'll be cool.
Let's do the princess. Okay.
All our girls.
I'm a big fan of the princess. Yep. All right. So once we've picked our player, one tip I just want to say. So sometimes the sprite image can be a little bit big to fit through the passageways of your maze. So I suggest that you leave at least a little bit of space around your sprite here. As she's kind of traveling through your maze. So so that's what I would suggest, is you just kind of make sure that there's a little bit of space here around your player character, just so she can fit through all of the different passageways. So once you've either designed your own little player character or picked one from the gallery, go ahead and click on this green Done button. Yep, and then you'll see your player kind of appear right here in the middle of our game. So we actually don't want our player to be in the middle of our game. Right. Where do we want it to be?
Obviously, we want it to start at the start tile, or our portal where we dropped the princess.
That's right. We want our princess to appear in the portal. So to do that, click on the Scene Toolbox drawer again. And then scroll down to the Tiles category. So again, it's the Tiles category in the Scene Toolbox drawer. And look for a block that's called Place My Sprite on top of Random. So there's a couple different blocks here. There's Place My Sprite on top of a specific column and row in our tile map, or we can specify the specific tile. So this is the one we want. So grab this block and drop it into the OnStart, and then click on this little drop down to select the tile we want our sprite to start on, which is going to be our portal tile here. And you'll notice there she goes. She gets placed right here on top of our starting tile.
Could you tell people again, just real quick, just how they can add the player and then add the player to the starter plot? You don't have to go through the
Yeah, no, I see. There's a couple of people who are kind of trying to catch up. So to create a player character, go to the Sprites toolbox drawer and grab this first block, this Set My Sprite block, and drag and drop it into your on start. And then click on this little gray square here. And this is where you can design your sprite, your player sprite. You can either draw it yourself, or you can go to the gallery and pick a sprite from there. And then that's how you create your player sprite. And then you want to place your sprite on top of the starting tile that we've defined. So.
And that's in the scene tab there.
Correct. Yeah. One thing that's also nice, if you forget where a block is, you can actually search for it. Like, I'm looking for this place block that she told me to find. So you can just start typing it here and you'll see it come up here as well. So. All right. So so we have our sprite and she's in the right place in our maze. But notice we can't move her, nothing happens. And so we need to add some code to be able to move our sprite. So to do that, go to your controller toolbox drawer, that's this orange one here. And you're gonna grab this first block, this Move My Sprite block, and you're gonna drag and drop it into your on start here. And this just allows us to control our sprite with the arrow keys on our keyboard, or just clicking this joystick here. Now, at this point, I'm just going to share out this game for you. So I'm just going to copy, since I can't put a link in the chat, I'm just going to copy the code here. And then I'm just going to paste, let's see. Paste this into the chat. So if anyone wants to try out the game that we have so far, you can go to the home page of Arcade. You can click on this import button here and then import URL. And then just paste that code that I put in the chat window here and click go ahead, and that will open up the game that we're just in the middle of building. So if you haven't caught up with us, you can start with us here. All right, so now when we play our game, you'll notice, she kind of disappears off the screen here. So that's not good. So what we need to do is we need to fix that. So how do you think we can fix that?
Obviously, we're gonna have to add something that allows the player, the screen to move when the player moves. So that's what we'll have to do.
That's right. Yeah. So it looks like Jess Kempster suggested in the scene toolbox drawer. Yeah, so that's correct. So if you click on the scene toolbox drawer and you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see a section called camera. Yep. And in this camera section, the block you want is the camera follow sprite block. So you want to grab this block, camera follow sprite, and drag and drop it into our on start. And so now when we move our sprite along the maze, you'll see the camera follows us as we navigate through our maze here. So, oh yeah, this is the ending. So now the only thing we're missing here is when she gets to the ending, you know, nothing happens. So so we need a way to sort of win the game, right?
Correct. Yep.
So to do that, go to your scene toolbox drawer again, and under the tiles category here, under tiles, you'll see a block that says on sprite of kind player overlaps with a tile. So this is the block we want here. So grab this block and put it onto your workspace. You can put it anywhere. And so what this block says is when our player sprite, and our sprite is a player sprite, overlaps with a tile. So what tile do we need to pick here?
The chest.
The chest, that's right. Yeah, because this was our ending tile, right?
Yep.
So when our sprite overlaps with a chest, then we win the game. So click on the game toolbox drawer, and you'll see a block that's called Game Over. So grab this block and drag and drop it into our overlaps block, and then toggle it on to win, because we're not going to lose, we're going to win.
Yep.
And this time when we move our player character over, and she navigates through the maze, hooray, we win the game. All right, so that's pretty much the basics of our maze game. What do you think? Should we try and make it a little bit harder, Brandon?
Yeah, I think obviously everyone can move the controller and get the player there, but I think one cool thing you could add is maybe a timer or a countdown. So you have to frantically get to the end of the game, and obviously going down the wrong path might cost you. So maybe adding a countdown for everything would be good.
I love that idea. That's great. Yeah. So to do that, we can go to the info toolbox drawer. And if you scroll down to the countdown section here, you'll see there's a block called Start Countdown. So let's grab this block and drop it into our on start. So we're going to start the countdown right when our program starts. And then she has to navigate the maze in 10 seconds, which might be a little bit hard. Yikes. Yeah. I think I'm gonna bump this up. Let's change it to maybe, what do you think? 15? 15. All right. So the info, there was a question in the chat. The info toolbox drawer is this one here. It's this sort of light pink one. And you'll see there's a countdown section here. Yep. Okay, so let's try it. Let's try 15 seconds and see if I can get through the maze in that amount of time. Okay, this is tough. Yay, I made it. Okay, so maybe I'll change it to 12 just to be a little bit more challenging.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share this game now, this Temple of Brandon game, and into the chat window. So for those of you who didn't get a chance to actually code this on your own, you can follow along by just clicking on that link, and then you'll be able to open up our Temple of Brandon game. This is the full screen. So if you click on this little button here in the simulator, it's launch in full screen. We can get the full effect of our game. So let me restart. This Temple of Brandon game where our princess is frantically trying to get through this maze that we've created within the time frame. Oh, and I just made it. 0.88. 0.88 milliseconds later. Great. All right, so that's the beginning of our maze game. Obviously, there's a lot of additional things you could add to this game, like maybe enemy sprites. What other things, Brandon, do you think that people could add to this maze game?
Yeah, I think there's either enemies or things to avoid, like maybe some spikes because we're in the temple.
That's right.
And then maybe some things that you could collect along the way that you could pop in there, and all these things you can add, through these, like Jacqueline said, through the search. You could search things to add, or go through the games and the tabs here to add all these different to make your game more difficult, or obviously change it up. You'll create a game and then allow your sister, your brother, your mom or dad, and try to beat the timer. So maybe change the game up every now and then. Different end result. So they don't get to see or cheat from one person to the other. So there's a lot of different things that you could do here to make the game more difficult and have fun with your family and friends.
That's right. Great. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for coding this maze game with me today. Do you have any sort of last minute advice or tips for students who are studying at home right now because school's out, that you want to offer?
Yeah, I think obviously we're all living in a tough time right now, and something that we've never had to do before. So we're all new at this, and I think you just got to take every day, one day at a time, and wake up every morning. Have a great breakfast, because breakfast is one of the key things to start your day, and look forward to how you can help either your parents or your family or the community in any way you can. Obviously, by staying safe and staying inside is the biggest thing right now. And one of the things that I think is important is to continue your education. Obviously, you're not in school right now, but you'll be back to school. And obviously, the internet's a great source to learn a lot of different things. And if your school is doing online classes, obviously pay attention and sign in there. And you can always come to there's a lot of different stuff you can learn on Microsoft, as well as obviously these coding games. And I'm excited to see what a lot of the guys. I'll be back. We'll have more episodes and of this All Stars, and seeing what kind of games that you guys can create. So I'm excited for that.
That's great. Yeah, I hope you do come back with us, Brandon. And I promise we'll solve some of these technical issues that we had at the beginning of this stream. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in to our first ever Microsoft Stores Digital All-Stars show with Brandon McManus. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.